The pen hovered over the signature line that would ruin my financial future but save their legacy, and as I looked into my father's desperate eyes, I realized they hadn't looked at me with genuine love in 20 years. They were only looking at what I could provide. The ringtone assigned to my parents was a generic, jarring trill I had never bothered to change, mostly because I heard it so rarely. When it pierced the silence of my Denver apartment on a Tuesday evening, I nearly dropped the mug of tea I was holding. It was 8 p.m., which meant it was 9 p.m. in Plano, Texas. They were usually asleep, or at least settled in front of the television by now. My first instinct wasn't excitement. It was a conditioned, weary dread. I assumed they needed help resetting the router password again, or wanted to know why their streaming service was acting funny. I let it ring twice before sliding my thumb across the screen. Hello! Jordan? Hey, sweetheart. Did I catch you at a bad time? It was my dad, Robert. His voice was tight, the pitch slightly higher than usual. He sounded nervous. Not angry. Nervous. That was the first red flag. My father didn't get nervous. He was a man who bulldozed through life with the confidence of someone who believed the world owed him the right of way. He was a businessman, a pillar of the community, the guy who always knew a guy. No, Dad, I'm just winding down, I said, walking over to the window. The lights of downtown Denver twinkled in the distance, a cold, sharp contrast to the humid, sprawling suburbs I had escaped. Is everything okay? Is Mom all right? Oh, fine. Everyone's fine, he said quickly, too quickly. Your mother is just in the bath. Listen, Jordan, we were looking at the calendar, and we realized we haven't seen you in, well, it's been a while. 6 months, I said. Since Christmas, when you guys left early to beat the traffic. There was a pause. Right. Well, we miss you. And actually, something has come up. A little administrative thing. We're doing some estate planning. Just tidying up the assets. You know how it is. I didn't know how it was. I had built my life on a foundation of rented apartments and a savings account I guarded with my life. Estate planning was for people like them, people with assets to hide or flaunt. Okay, I said slowly. And we need a signature. It's nothing big. Just a form regarding the house trust. We can't fax it or email it. The lawyers are being sticklers about original wet signatures and notarization in person. We were hoping you could fly down this weekend. We'll pay for the ticket, of course. I frowned, my reflection in the glass looking back at me with skepticism. My parents offering to pay for a flight was unheard of. When I was eating ramen noodles to pay off my student loans from UT Austin, they told me that struggle builds character. When my sister, Brianna, wanted to go to Coachella, they called it a cultural experience and footed the bill. Dad, I have work. I can't just drop everything to sign a piece of paper. Can't you overnight it? No, he insisted, his voice hardening just a fraction before softening again. It's complicated, Jordy. Please. It would mean a lot to your mother. She's been sentimental lately. That was the hook. They knew I was the responsible one. The one who felt duty in her bones, even when that duty was unreciprocated. I was the backup plan, the safety net they ignored until the tightrope wobbled. Fine. I sighed, hating myself for it. I'll look at flights. By Friday afternoon, I was landing at DFW Airport. The heat hit me the moment I stepped out of the terminal, that heavy, suffocating Texas humidity that feels like a wet wool blanket. I rented a car, not wanting to rely on them for a ride, and drove north toward Plano. The drive was a muscle memory I couldn't erase. The sprawling highways, the endless strip malls, the transition from city grit to manicured suburbia. I pulled into the driveway of the house I grew up in. It was a sprawling 2-story brick home with white columns and a lawn that looked like it had been cut with nail scissors. It was the physical manifestation of my parents' image, perfect, imposing, and expensive. But as I killed the engine, I noticed things felt off. The flower beds, usually bursting with seasonal color, looked sparse. The expensive wreath that always hung on the front door was gone, leaving a faint, sun-faded circle on the wood. It felt quieter than usual. I took a deep breath, grabbed my bag, and walked to the door. Before I could knock, my mother, Linda, opened it. She looked tired. Her makeup was perfect, her hair coiffed, but her eyes were darting around, avoiding mine. Jordan, you made it, she said, pulling me into a hug that felt more like a frantic clutch than an embrace. She smelled like lavender and anxiety. "Hi, Mom. Good to see you," I said, pulling back. "Where's Brianna?" "Dad said she might be around." "Oh, she's in Los Angeles," Mom said, waving her hand dismissively as she ushered me inside. "She's so busy with her projects. You know how she is. A free spirit." I knew exactly how she was. Brianna was the golden child. Straight A's, cheer captain, the one who lit up a room. I was the shadow. I was the one who studied until my eyes burned, the one who worked part-time jobs in high school while Brianna got a new convertible for her 16th birthday. We walked into the kitchen. It was immaculate, the granite countertops gleaming under the pendant lights. My dad was sitting at the head of the table, a thick manila folder in front of him. He stood up when I entered, a tight smile stretching his face. "There she is. The prodigal daughter returns," he boomed, though the joviality didn't reach his eyes. "I'm hardly a prodigal daughter, Dad. I've been paying my own bills since I was 22, I said, setting my purse down. "Always so serious," he chuckled, but the sound died quickly. "Sit down, Jordan. Let's get this over with, so we can order some dinner." I was thinking barbecue. I sat. The air in the kitchen felt heavy, pressurized. My mom hovered by the sink, pretending to wipe down a counter that was already clean. "So what is this form?" I asked, gesturing to the folder. My dad placed his hand on it, as if protecting it. Like I said on the phone, just some housekeeping. "We're restructuring the family trust, ensuring the future of the estate." He slid the folder across the smooth granite. It stopped right in front of me. I opened it. It wasn't just a form. It was a stack of legal documents, property titles, a trust amendment. I started to read, my eyes scanning the dense legal jargon. I had learned to read contracts carefully during my years in corporate management. "Just sign at the tabs, honey," Mom said from the sink, her voice brittle. I ignored her and turned the page. Then I stopped. My breath hitched in my throat. "Dad," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Why is my name on the refinancing agreement from 2018? He cleared his throat. "What?" "Oh, that was just a formality." "A formality?" I looked up, locking eyes with him. "It says here I'm a co-signer. On the house. This house. The one you always bragged about owning outright." My dad shifted in his chair. Business was tight a few years back. The market dipped. We needed to leverage some equity, and my credit score had taken a temporary hit. "We used your profile to secure the rate. It didn't affect you. You didn't even know." I felt the blood drain from my face. They had used my credit, my good name, the name I had worked so hard to keep clean. "And what is this document?" I pointed to the one requiring my signature today. "That," my dad said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "transfers the title." "And the liability? To who?" "To Brianna." I stared at him. "You want me to sign over a house that I apparently legally own part of to Brianna? Why? So she can sell it and blow the money in LA? Because you're responsible." Mom finally snapped, turning around. Her eyes were wet. "You're strong, Jordan. You can handle the risk. Brianna would mess this up, but we need it in her name. Now." "Why?" I demanded. "Because," Dad said, leaning forward, his mask of confidence finally cracking to reveal pure panic. "Because if you don't, we lose everything. Have you ever been the one who gives everything to your family, only to be treated like a transactional object? If you've ever felt like the backup plan in your own home while a sibling got the glory, I need you to hit that like button right now. It hurts, doesn't it? That feeling in your gut that says you're only useful when they need something. Subscribe to the channel and comment, "I am worth more," below so we can support each other, because what I uncover next about why they need the signature is going to make your blood boil. Tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. Let's show my parents that Real family supports you, no matter where you are. "I need time," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. I closed the folder and pulled it toward me, creating a physical barrier between myself and my parents. The air in the kitchen shifted instantly. The nervous energy radiating from my father curdled into something sharper. Resentment. "Time," he barked, slamming his hand on the table. The silverware rattled. "Jordan, we don't have time. The lawyers need this filed by Monday morning. It's Friday night. You need to sign it now so we can get it notarized tomorrow. If it's just a standard trust transfer, Monday morning is fine, I countered, standing up. I'm taking this to my room. I'll read it over tonight, and I'll give you an answer at breakfast. My mother looked at my father, her eyes wide with panic. Bob. Fine, Dad snapped, pouring himself a drink from the sideboard with a little too much force. Read it. Analyze it. Do whatever it is you do. But don't forget who paid for the roof over your head for 18 years. I didn't answer. I just turned and walked out of the kitchen, the heavy folder tucked under my arm like a shield. I retreated to the guest room, my old room having been converted into a craft room for my mother years ago. The guest room was sterile, filled with generic decor that felt like a hotel. I locked the door, a habit I hadn't needed in my own apartment but felt essential here. I sat on the edge of the bed and spread the documents out. My heart was hammering against my ribs. Because you're responsible. The words echoed in my head. They weren't a compliment, they were a target. I pulled out my laptop and connected to the Wi-Fi. I needed to know why they were so desperate. My dad had mentioned business was tight, but my parents were masters of spin. Tight could mean they couldn't afford a new Mercedes, or it could mean bankruptcy. I navigated to the Dallas County Public Records site. It was a long shot, but if there were liens on the house, they would be public. I typed in my father's name. The search wheel spun for a second before populating a list. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just a lien. It was a lawsuit. Case No. CV 2024-0089. Apex Commercial versus Robert Miller and Miller Consulting. Status: judgment pending. Amount sought: $1.4 million. I clicked on the filing details. The lawsuit wasn't new. It had been dragging on for 8 months. My father had defaulted on a massive commercial construction contract. The final hearing was scheduled for next Tuesday. The pieces slammed together in my mind. They weren't downsizing. They were about to lose everything. If the house was in my name, or my dad's, the court could seize it to pay the debt. But if they transferred it to Brianna before the judgment was finalized, they could claim the asset was no longer theirs. They weren't just asking me to give Brianna a house. They were asking me to commit fraudulent conveyance. They were asking me to participate in a felony to hide assets from a creditor. And because my name was already on the title from the refinancing, I was the only one who could authorize the move. I felt sick. I leaned back against the headboard, the glowing screen illuminating the dark room. They were willing to risk my legal standing, my career, and my freedom just to save their wealth and pass it to Brianna. Suddenly, my phone buzzed on the nightstand, startling me. I picked it up, expecting a guilt-tripping text from my mom. But the number was unknown. No area code. No ID. I opened the message. It was a single image file. I clicked it. It was a photo of a document. A flight itinerary. Passenger, Brianna Miller. Origin, Los Angeles, LAX. Destination, Dallas, DFW. Date today. My blood ran cold. My parents had said Brianna was too busy to come. They said she was in LA. Below the image, 3 words were typed. She's already here. I stared at the screen until the pixels seemed to burn into my retinas. She's already here. The message sat there, taunting me. If Brianna was in Plano, why lie? Why go through the charade of saying she was in Los Angeles? The answer was obvious. They didn't want us in the same room. They wanted me to sign the papers in isolation, believing I was saving the family legacy, not handing it over to a sister who was hiding in the shadows. I needed proof. I couldn't confront them with a text from an unknown number. They'd gaslight me, tell me I was paranoid, or claim it was a wrong number. I needed to see her. I slipped my phone into my pocket and crept to the bedroom door. I eased it open, wincing as the hinges gave a faint, high-pitched whine. The hallway was dark, save for the amber glow of the nightlights plugged into the baseboards, safety measures for parents who were supposedly aging and frail, but who seemed sharp enough to orchestrate major fraud. The house was silent, but it wasn't empty. I could feel the presence of secrets in the walls. I moved toward the staircase, my bare feet silent on the plush runner. I checked the driveway through the foyer window. Only my rental car and my parents' SUV were there. If Brianna was here, where was she? Then I remembered. The pool house. It was a detached structure in the backyard, fully furnished. Growing up, It was strictly off-limits, reserved for my dad's poker nights or business meetings. If they were hiding the golden child, that's where she would be. I made my way through the kitchen, navigating by memory, and unlocked the back door. The humid night air hit me instantly, thick with the sound of cicadas. I stepped onto the patio, staying in the shadows of the oversized barbecue station. The pool house was about 30 yards away across the lawn. The windows were dark. No movement. No light. I was about to turn back, thinking the text was a prank, when I saw it. The faint, rhythmic blue flash of a television screen reflecting against the inner ceiling. Someone was in there, watching TV in the dark. I moved across the grass, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I reached the side of the structure and pressed my back against the cool siding. I inched toward the window, trying to find a gap in the blinds. I peered inside. The room was illuminated only by the flickering light of a flat screen. Lying on the leather sofa, scrolling through her phone with one hand and holding a glass of wine with the other, was Brianna. She didn't look like a struggling student or a busy artist. She looked relaxed, smug. Several open suitcases were scattered on the floor, spilling designer clothes. My blood boiled. They were playing me. The whole nervous dad act, the crying mom, it was a script. And Brianna was backstage, waiting for her cue to come out and take a bow once I'd signed away my financial life. I raised my hand to bang on the glass, to scream, to shatter their little secret. BZZT. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I froze. I pulled it out, shielding the screen's light against my chest. It was another message from the unknown number. Don't let them know you know. Not yet. I stared at the text, my thumb hovering over the screen. Who was this? How were they watching me? I looked around the dark yard, scanning the fence line, the trees, the neighbor's second-story windows. BZZT. Look at the driveway. I turned my head slowly toward the front of the house, peering through the gap between the main house and the garage. A black sedan was idling at the curb, its headlights off. The engine was a low purr I hadn't noticed over the cicadas. I hesitated, then looked back at Brianna, oblivious in her air-conditioned sanctuary. If I stormed in there, I'd get a screaming match. I wouldn't get answers. I turned and ran low across the grass, back into the house, through the foyer, and out the front door. I walked down the driveway, the gravel crunching under my feet. As I approached the black sedan, the rear window rolled down. I expected a friend, maybe an old neighbor. Instead, a man's face appeared from the shadows of the back seat. He was older, sharp-featured, wearing a suit that cost more than my car. He looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. "Get in, Jordan," he said, his voice smooth and cold like polished steel. "We have a mutual interest in your father's creativity." "Who are you?" I asked, gripping the door handle but not opening it. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm the man suing your parents for everything they have. And I think you and I need to discuss what a fraudulent transfer really means before you sign that death warrant." I opened the back door of the sedan and slid onto the cool leather seat. The interior smelled of expensive cologne and stale coffee. The man didn't turn around. He just watched me through the rearview mirror, his eyes dark and calculating. "You're the CEO of Apex Commercial," I said, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. "The plaintiff." "Vance," he corrected. "And yes, I'm the one your father owes $1.4 million to. Money he evidently doesn't have, considering he's trying to shuffle his only valuable asset, that house, into a shell trust before I can seize it." "He told me it was estate planning," I said. Vance scoffed, a dry, humorless sound. "It's called fraudulent conveyance, Jordan. It's a felony. If you sign that paper, you are actively conspiring to defraud a creditor. When, not if, I win this lawsuit next week, the court will look for the assets. If they find you moved the house to your sister after the lawsuit was filed, they won't just come for the house. They'll come for you. You'll be pierced by the corporate veil. Your assets, your savings, your wages in Denver, I'll take it all." My stomach churned. "I didn't know." "Ignorance isn't a defense in a federal inquiry," Vance said calmly. "Your parents know this. They know the risk. That's why they aren't signing it themselves. They need a patsy, someone with clean hands and a good name, to execute the transfer." "Why Brianna?" I asked, the question burning my throat. "Why give it to her?" Vance turned in his seat then, facing me for the first time. Because she made a deal. She's not keeping the house, Jordan. She's liquidating it. I blinked. What? I've been in talks with your sister's representatives for 2 weeks. The deal is simple. You sign the house over to her. She immediately sells it to a third-party developer for cash. Under market value, quick sale. Your parents take the cash and flee to a non-extradition friendly banking haven, or at least somewhere I can't garnish them easily. Brianna gets a cut for her trouble. And you. He leaned in closer. You get left holding the bag. When the transaction is flagged as fraudulent, you're the one who authorized it. You're the one on the deed. You go to prison, or at the very least, you go bankrupt fighting the charges. I felt like I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just favoritism. It was a calculated sacrifice. They were feeding me to the wolves, so they could escape with the meat. Why tell me? I whispered. If you want the money, why not let them sell it and then sue them? Because by the time the dust settles, the cash will be gone, Vance said. I want the house. I want the asset. I don't want a 5-year chase for cash hidden in the Cayman Islands. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, sleek digital recorder. You don't have to believe me, he said, pressing it into my hand. Your father has a habit of recording his business meetings. He thinks it's smart. He doesn't realize his cloud backups are accessible to people with my resources. I looked down at the device. Play the last file, Vance said softly. It's from yesterday. A conversation between your father and Brianna. I pressed play. My father's voice crackled through the tiny speaker, clear as day. Don't worry about Jordan. She's desperate for us to be proud of her. She'll sign whatever we put in front of her if we tell her it saves the family. Then Brianna's voice. A laugh. God, she's so pathetic. Are you sure this won't blow back on me? Not a chance, my father replied. By the time the IRS or Vance figures it out, we'll be liquid, and Jordan will be the one explaining why she signed a fraudulent deed. She's the shield, honey. You're the prize. The recording clicked off. I sat there in the dark car, the silence ringing in my ears louder than any scream. Vance watched me. Now you know. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I'm leaving, I said, reaching for the door handle. I'm flying back to Denver tonight. You could, Vance said. But then they'll just forge your signature. They've done it before, haven't they? I froze. He knew about the refinancing. If you leave, they win, Vance said. But if you stay, we can burn them down together. How? He smiled, and this time it was terrifying. Turn the page on the document they gave you. The one you haven't read yet. I read them all, I said. No. Vance shook his head. You read the ones in the folder. You didn't read the one your mother slipped under the folder when you walked in. It's still on the kitchen table, under the placemat. What is it? A power of attorney, Vance said. If you don't sign the deed by tomorrow morning, that document gives your father the legal right to sign for you. And it goes into effect at midnight tonight. I looked at the dashboard clock. 11:15 p.m. 40 minutes, Vance said, checking his watch. If you don't have that document in your hand by midnight, you legally cease to be an autonomous adult regarding your assets. I didn't say goodbye. I scrambled out of the sedan, the humidity wrapping around me like a chokehold. The gravel driveway felt like a minefield as I crept back toward the front door. Every crunch sounded like a gunshot in the silent neighborhood. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my keys twice before managing to slide the brass key into the lock. I turned it slowly, praying the tumblers wouldn't click loudly. The door swung open. The house was dark, but the television in the den was still on, casting a flickering blue light down the hallway. I could hear the low drone of a news anchor, followed by the soft, rhythmic snoring of my father. He had fallen asleep in his recliner. My mother was likely upstairs. I didn't breathe. I moved like a ghost, stepping on the edges of the floorboards where they were less likely to creak. My destination was the kitchen table. I reached the archway of the kitchen. It was pitch black, save for the moonlight filtering through the bay window. I froze, letting my eyes adjust. The table was a dark island in the center of the room. Under the placemat, I took a step, then another. I reached the head of the table where my father had been sitting. My fingers brushed the woven fabric of the placemat. I lifted it. Paper. I pulled it out, straining to read the text in the moonlight. Durable power of attorney. The header was bold and unmistakable. I skipped to the bottom. My stomach turned over. It wasn't just a draft. It was dated for today. And there, on the signature line, was a scrawl that looked terrifyingly like my own. They had practiced. They were ready to execute this the moment the clock struck 12, using a notary friend to backdate it if necessary. I folded the document and shoved it into the waistband of my jeans. I had it. I needed to get out, get back to Vance, and figure out how to use this as leverage. I turned to leave, but as I pivoted, my elbow clipped the crystal fruit bowl on the center of the table. Clink! It wasn't loud, but in the silence of the house, it was amplified. The snoring in the den stopped. "Linda," my dad's voice called out, groggy but alert. "Is that you?" I froze. There was nowhere to hide. If I ran for the front door, he'd see me. If I ran for the back, I'd be heading toward the pool house in Brianna. "Linda!" He sounded closer now. The recliner squeaked as he stood up. I backed up, pressing myself into the narrow pantry alcove, praying the shadows would swallow me. Footsteps. Heavy, shuffling footsteps. My father walked into the kitchen. He didn't turn on the light. He walked straight to the fridge, the light from the open door illuminating his face. He looked older than I remembered, his skin gray and sagging. He grabbed a bottle of water, chugged it, and wiped his mouth. Then he looked at the table. He stared at the spot where the placemat was slightly askew. He didn't call out. He didn't yell. He just set the water bottle down and reached into the pocket of his robe. He pulled out a phone. He dialed a number and put it to his ear. I held my breath, expecting him to call the police. Or Mom. "It's me," he whispered. "We have a problem. The document is gone." A pause. "No, she didn't leave. Her car is still here." Another pause. And then he said something that made my knees buckle. "Yeah, I know. If she doesn't sign, we go with Plan B. Is the dosage ready? Is the dosage ready?" The question hung in the humid air like toxic smoke. My father wasn't talking about a cocktail. The Plan B wasn't a backup legal strategy. It was a physical assault. My heart hammered against my ribs, so hard I thought it would give away my position. Upstairs, I heard the heavy thud of footsteps moving toward the bedrooms. He was going to check my room. I had seconds. I didn't wait for him to realize the guest room was empty. I slipped out of the pantry and lunged for the back door leading to the garage. My hands were slick with sweat, slipping on the knob, but I managed to turn it and tumble into the cool, concrete darkness of the garage. I leaned against the door, gasping for air. The garage smelled of gasoline and old cardboard. My father's Lexus was parked on the left. My rental was in the driveway. I heard the muffled sound of a door slamming inside the house. Then, my father's voice shouting, "Linda! She's not in the room." I pushed off the door and sprinted toward the side exit of the garage. I needed to get to Vance. He was my only way out. He was the only one who knew the truth. I burst out into the side yard. The night was thick and dark, the only light coming from the motion sensor floodlight that suddenly snapped on, blinding me. I froze. 10 feet away, emerging from the shadows of the pool house path, was Brianna. She wasn't wearing her pajamas anymore. She was dressed in black yoga pants and a hoodie, her hair pulled back tight. In her hand, she held a small, clear vial and a syringe. She stopped, blinking in the harsh light. Her eyes went to the folder tucked into my waistband, then up to my face. A slow, cruel smile spread across her lips. "Going somewhere, Geordie?" she asked, her voice dangerously calm. "You're insane," I hissed, backing away. "You're going to drug me?" "It's just a little sedative," she said, taking a step forward, twirling the syringe between her fingers like a baton. "Dad's panic attacks are getting worse. He has plenty of Xanax. We just need you groggy enough to guide your hand. You won't even remember it." "This is a felony," I shouted, inching toward the driveway. "Kidnapping. Assault. It's family business," she countered. "And nobody is going to believe the jealous, unstable sister who ran away." She lunged. I didn't think. I reacted. I threw my heavy purse at her face. The strap caught her in the eye, and she stumbled back with a yelp, dropping the vial. It shattered on the pavement. I didn't wait to see if she recovered. I turned and sprinted down the driveway, my feet pounding against the concrete. "Dad! She's outside!" Brianna screamed behind me. I saw the black sedan, still idling at the curb. It was a beacon of safety in a world gone mad. I reached the passenger door and ripped it open, diving inside. "Drive!" I screamed, slamming the door. "They're coming!" They tried to drug me. I locked the door and slumped back into the leather seat, my chest heaving. "Vance, you have to get me out of here. We need to go to the police." The car didn't move. The engine was running, the AC was humming, but the gear shift remained in park. I turned to look at him. Vance was staring straight ahead, his hands resting calmly on the steering wheel. He wasn't looking at the house. He wasn't looking at my parents running down the driveway. "Vance!" I touched his arm. "Did you hear me? Go!" He slowly turned his head toward me. The look on his face wasn't concern. It was disappointment. "You dropped the phone," he said calmly. "What?" "The recording device I gave you. You dropped it in the car seat when you got out earlier." "Who cares?" I yelled, watching my father emerge from the shadows of the garage, a tire iron in his hand. "Drive the car." Vance reached into his pocket and pulled out his own phone. He tapped the screen. Click! The sound of car door locks engaging echoed through the sedan. It wasn't the sound of safety. It was the sound of a cage closing. "I can't leave yet, Jordan," Vance said, his voice devoid of warmth. "I don't have what I came for. I have the power of attorney." I pulled the crumpled paper from my waistband. "I got it. We can stop them." Vance shook his head. "You misunderstand. I don't want to stop them." He pointed out the window. My father had reached the car. He wasn't attacking it. He was tapping politely on the driver's side window. Vance rolled it down. "Did you get it?" my father asked, breathless, looking past Vance to glare at me. "She has it," Vance said, nodding at the paper in my hand. "And she's ready to negotiate." My blood froze. "You know him," I whispered, my voice breaking. Vance smiled, and it was the sharpest thing in the car. "Jordan, I'm not the plaintiff. I'm the investor financing your father's defense. And we need that signature to pay me back." The betrayal hit me harder than the humidity. I sat frozen as the back door opened and my father slid onto the seat beside me. He didn't look like the man who taught me to ride a bike. He looked like a cornered animal, sweating and manic. "You left us no choice, Jordan," he panted, grabbing my wrist with a grip that bruised. He smelled of scotch and stale fear. "We gave you a chance to do this the easy way." "The easy way!" I choked out, trying to yank my arm free. "You tried to drug me. You're kidnapping me." "It's an intervention," Vance said smoothly from the front seat, putting the car into drive. "We're going to a notary I use for sensitive matters. He doesn't mind late hours or reluctant signatories." The car pulled away from the curb. I looked back at the house. Brianna was standing in the driveway, nursing her eye, watching us leave with a look of pure malice. "Vance is handling the debt," Dad muttered, releasing my wrist only to snatch my phone from my hand. "He buys the house from Brianna, clears the judgment, and we walk away clean. You're the only loose thread." "Why?" I demanded, looking at the back of Vance's head. "Why play the good guy? Why pick me up and tell me about the fraud if you're working with him?" Vance met my eyes in the rearview mirror. "I needed to gauge your compliance. If you were willing to turn on them immediately, you were a liability. I needed to know if you could be bought or if you needed to be broken." "And the texts?" I pressed, my mind racing. "Why warn me about Brianna? Why tell me she was here?" Vance frowned, his eyes narrowing slightly. "What texts?" "The ones you sent me. She's already here. Don't let them know." Vance chuckled darkly. "Jordan, I didn't text you. I don't even have your number. I tracked you here via the GPS in your father's phone." My heart skipped a beat. "Stop lying," Dad snapped, scrolling through my phone. "She's trying to confuse us." "I'm not," I yelled. "Someone texted me. Someone warned me about the pool house and told me to look at the driveway." Vance slammed on the brakes, the car skidding slightly on the dark suburban street. He turned around, his composure cracking for the first time. "Robert, check her messages." "Now." My dad swiped the screen. His face went pale in the glow of the dashboard lights. There's a thread," Dad stammered. "A no number." "Read it," Vance commanded. "It says, she's already here." Then, "Look at the driveway." "I didn't send those," Vance said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. Someone else is watching the house. The car was silent, idling in the middle of the road. The realization that there was a third player, someone who knew their plan and had been guiding me, sucked the oxygen out of the cabin. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my father's hand. The screen lit up, bright enough for all of us to see. It was a new message from the unknown number. Dad read it, and the phone slipped from his fingers, clattering onto the floor mat. "What does it say?" Vance barked. I looked down at the screen. The message was short, but it changed everything. I cut the brake lines on the sedan. "Enjoy the next curve." Vance slammed his foot onto the brake pedal. It hit the floorboard with a hollow, sickening thud. There was no resistance, no hydraulic pressure, just the mechanical failure of a severed connection. "It's true," Vance whispered, his face draining of color. "The pedal is dead." "What?" My father's voice cracked, rising an octave. "We're not moving." "It's fine. Just put it in park." "We are in park, you idiot," Vance snarled, his cool facade disintegrating. "But if I had driven us onto the highway, at 60 miles an hour, he turned to look at my father, eyes blazing. "Who knew we were leaving? Who did you tell?" "No one. Just Linda," Dad screamed. The car was a sealed box of panic, but the doors were momentarily forgotten. Vance reached for the door handle, the electronic lock clicking open as he scrambled to check the undercarriage. That was my opening. While Dad was hyperventilating, staring at the back of Vance's seat, I lunged for the floor mat. My fingers curled around my phone just as Dad realized I was moving. "Jordan." "No." He grabbed for my shoulder, his fingers digging into my trapezius. I didn't hesitate. I didn't think about the bike rides or the college tuition he didn't pay. I thought about the Plan B syringe. I spun in the seat and kicked out with both legs. My heel connected squarely with his chest. He wheezed, his grip faltering. I scrambled out of the open door on the passenger side, stumbling onto the asphalt. The night air was heavy, but it tasted like freedom. "She's running," Dad yelled, coughing. Vance was on his knees by the rear tire, a flashlight in his hand. He looked up, spotting me. He reached into his jacket, not for a phone, but for something metallic. I didn't wait to see what it was. I sprinted. I ran toward the neighbor's yard, vaulting over a low decorative hedge. My lungs burned. I could hear shouting behind me, but no footsteps yet. They were likely wary of following me into the dark, or perhaps Vance was more concerned with his sabotage car. I ducked behind a massive oak tree 2 houses down, sliding to the ground, trying to quiet my breathing. I looked at my phone. Another message from the unknown number. "Blue Honda. West Corner. 30 seconds. I stared at the text. Whoever this was, they had saved my life. They had cut the brakes. They were guiding me. I heard sirens in the distance, faint, but getting closer. Were they coming for me? Or had the neighbors called about the shouting? I crept toward the corner of the block. A beat-up blue Honda Civic was idling at the stop sign, its headlights off. I hesitated. This could be another trap. The passenger window rolled down. "Get in, loser," a voice hissed. Before Vance figures out I'm not actually at the house. My jaw dropped. I ran to the car and threw the door open. Behind the wheel, wearing a hoodie pulled low over her face, was Brianna. I slammed the door, and she peeled out, tires screeching against the pavement, taking the corner fast enough to throw me against the door. "You!" I gasped, staring at her profile. "You cut the lines. I had to make sure you didn't leave with him," she said, her eyes glued to the road. "And I had to make sure they couldn't chase us. But you attacked me. The syringe." "Saline," she said, glancing at me briefly. Her left eye was swelling shut where I had hit her with my purse. "I had to sell it, Jordan." Dad was watching from the window. If I didn't look like the loyal soldier, he would have locked me in the basement again. "Again," I whispered. Brianna turned onto the main road, merging into traffic. She reached into the back seat and tossed a thick, bound document into my lap. "I didn't just find out about the house, Jordan. I broke into Dad's safe 3 days ago. That's why I called you. That's why I needed you here." I opened the document. It wasn't a deed. It was a life insurance policy. 2 of them. One for me. One for Brianna. Both dated last week. Both with payouts in the millions. "They aren't just selling the house to pay the debt," Brianna said, her voice trembling with a mixture of rage and terror. The house isn't enough to cover what they owe the cartel. The house is just the appetizer. She looked at me, a tear sliding down her bruised cheek. We're the main course. Cartel, I repeated, the word feeling heavy and foreign on my tongue. The streetlights flickered past us as Brianna navigated the Honda toward the highway, putting distance between us and the affluent cage of our childhood. Mom and Dad are involved with a cartel. Not a drug cartel, Jordan. Private equity loan sharks, Brianna said, her voice hard. She wiped a smudge of blood from her cheek where the purse strap had cut her. Vance isn't a CEO. He's a cleaner. Dad borrowed money from him 5 years ago to cover the losses on the construction firm. The interest rates were impossible. When the payments stopped, Vance started making threats. I looked down at the insurance policies in my lap. The numbers were staggering. $5 million on each of our heads. So the house transfer, the trust. It was never about the house, Brianna said, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. The house is worth maybe $800,000. They owe Vance $4 million. The house was just the bait to get you to Texas. The real payout was the insurance. I felt the blood drain from my face. The sedan. The brakes. Exactly, Brianna said. They needed an accident. A tragic car crash involving the estranged daughter and the business associate giving her a ride to the airport. 2 birds, 1 stone. Dad gets the insurance money for you, and he gets rid of the man threatening to break his legs. The cruelty was so absolute, so calculating, that I struggled to breathe. My parents, the people who taught me to tie my shoes, who attended my graduation, had planned to murder me to settle a debt. I'm sorry I hit you, I whispered, looking at her swelling eye. I deserved it for not telling you sooner, she said with a grim smile. But I couldn't risk them finding out I was onto them. I had to play the brat. I had to make them think I was on their side, so I could get the combination to the safe. We merged onto the dark stretch of I-75, heading south toward Dallas. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a cold, trembling shock. Where are we going? I asked. I have a friend in Bishop Arts. We can crash there, call the FBI in the morning, Brianna said. We have the recording, the policies, and the texts I sent you. It's enough to put them away for life. I nodded, clutching my phone. I scrolled back to the messages. The warning about the pool house. The warning about the driveway. The warning about the brakes. Thank God you saw him cut the lines, I said. If you hadn't texted me right then, I wouldn't have checked the floor mat for the phone. I would be dead. Brianna frowned, glancing over at me. The dashboard lights cast deep shadows on her face. What are you talking about? The text, I said, holding up the screen. About the brake lines. You saved me. Brianna slowed the car, pulling into the breakdown lane under a flickering overpass. She put the car in park and turned to me, her good eye wide with confusion. Jordan, she said slowly. I sent you the text about the pool house. I sent you the text about the driveway. But I didn't send you anything about brake lines. The air in the car went stale. What? I whispered. I didn't know the brakes were cut, she insisted. I was in the Honda the whole time waiting for you to run. I didn't see anyone touch the sedan. I stared at the phone. The message was there. I cut the brake lines on the sedan. Enjoy the next curve. If Brianna didn't send it, and Vance didn't send it, and my parents certainly didn't send it, who sent this? I asked, my voice trembling. Before Brianna could answer, my phone buzzed again. A new message from the unknown number. I didn't do it to save you. I did it to make sure the game continues. Check the glove box. My hand trembled as I reached for the glove box latch. It clicked open, revealing a heavy, matte black hard drive and a folded piece of hotel stationery. I unfolded the note. The handwriting was jagged, hurried. Vance isn't the top of the food chain. He's the middleman. This drive contains his leverage file, recordings, ledgers, and the hit order on you two signed by Robert Miller. It buries Vance, your parents, and the investors they answer to. Drop it at the FBI field office on Stonebridge Drive. Do not stop. Do not go back. What is it? Brianna asked, her eyes darting between the road and the object in my hand. The nail in the coffin, I said, a cold sense of clarity washing over me. The unknown number isn't playing a game with us. They're using us to take down the whole operation. We're the delivery system. We go to the feds, Brianna said, her voice hardening. Now. We didn't go to Bishop Arts. We drove straight to the FBI building, the hard drive burning a hole in my lap. We walked in disheveled, bruised, and terrified, but when I slapped that drive on the intake desk and said, "This contains evidence of conspiracy to commit murder and international money laundering," the room stopped. The next 48 hours were a blur of interviews, protective custody, and bad coffee. But the moment that stuck, the moment that is burned into my memory forever, was the arraignment. They brought my parents in separately. My father looked small. The bluster, the arrogance, the businessman facade, it had all dissolved, leaving a terrified old man in an orange jumpsuit. When he saw me in the gallery, he didn't look sorry. He looked angry that his property had rebelled. My mother wept, playing the victim until the prosecutor played the audio file from the drive, the one where she asked Vance if the accident would void the insurance payout. The courtroom went silent. Her tears stopped instantly, replaced by a stone-faced glare. Vance didn't even look at us. He knew the game was over. They were denied bail. The evidence was overwhelming. The house was seized, the assets frozen, and the legacy they were so desperate to protect was auctioned off to pay for their legal defense, a defense that failed. 6 months later, I sat on the balcony of a small apartment in San Diego. The ocean breeze was different here, lighter, cleaner than the humid air of Texas. "Coffee's ready," Brianna said, stepping out through the sliding door. The bruising on her face was long gone, but the scar on her brow remained, a reminder of the night we stopped being rivals and started being sisters. She handed me a mug and sat down next to me. We didn't talk about them often. We didn't visit. We had signed the final papers last week, a complete severance of ties. No contact orders. "You know," Brianna said, looking out at the water, "I always hated you growing up because I thought you had it easy. No pressure. No expectations. You could just be." I smiled, a genuine, easy smile. "And I hated you because I thought you had it all. The love. The praise. Turns out," she clinked her mug against mine, "we were both just employees in a failing business. And we just quit," I said. My phone buzzed on the table. For a second, a phantom spike of adrenaline hit me. I looked at the screen. It wasn't an unknown number. It was a notification from our shared bank account. The settlement check from the state's victim compensation fund, plus the restitution from the liquidated assets of Vance's firm, had cleared. It wasn't millions, but it was enough. Enough to start over. Enough to be free. I picked up the phone and powered it down. "So," I said, looking at my sister, the only real family I had left. "What do we do now?" Brianna grinned, and for the first time, she looked like the golden child she was meant to be, not because of them, but because of us. "Whatever the hell we want."